Good afternoon, everyone. I'm honored to be here. When I imagine Canada's future, research future, when I thought about it, and as I looked around the crowd here today, I am imagining that my imagination of Canada's future is the same as yours. It's sort of a future where I think all the people can come together and work together. It's a sort of a future where we honor human communities, wherever they come from, and the theme here, of course, is Aboriginal. So we think about the First Nations communities, the Cree people, the Dakota, the Anishinaabe. These are all human communities. And as I think about that, the Métis are also, very proud, and they are a human community, and the Inuit, for sure. And then you have the European descendants, or the Europeans even within here. If I asked you what is your nationality, I would hope that you can tell me that your memory has not been as erased as some of us in First Nations culture. But I would hope that you can recognize your own human community, where you come from, where your parents come from, your ancestors. What kind of land did they come from? What kind of a cultural knowledge base did they come from? I could ask that question. So. And I see our brothers over there, brothers and sisters over there, different human community, and we all come from these human communities, and they're very autonomous. Now, when I imagine a future, then whether it be in research or knowledge sharing, what I'm imagining is that these human communities become really strong. How would it be like in Canada if we did have the optimum of the Cree people that we could share in a university setting like this? What else would we know? How would our lives improve if we use that optimum knowledge of the Cree people? What it would be like to use the optimum knowledge of the Métis, the Inuit, or any of the of your particular nationality as you think about it? What is that knowledge that you have as your nationality, and how would the world improve to use the optimum of that knowledge? Now, of course, in research, it's very contested. I'm not the first to say that. Everybody, please get into research. Start researching. That this is what the university agenda tells us to do. But there's so much uncontested ground there that we have to recognize the privileges that have been put forth in our institutions in this country. The colonial mind has not been yet eradicated in this country, and it still assists in all our institutions in this country. And guess who is privileged by that, and who is not so privileged? So I want to steer this as well into the area of not only the research that needs to be done, but wherever I go, and I see one right here, Jacqueline right there. I see the hunger of our people. It's a hunger. I see it in the young people. You can gauge it yourself. If you're really hungry for knowledge, for knowledge's sake, or to pass to get a degree. But this hunger is much deeper. It's a sort of a really spiritual hunger to know. Not just knowledge, but really to know, who are we? Maybe not necessarily, it could be a particular nationality, but who are we really as human beings? And so the young people are really hungry. They want to hear the language. They want to know what is out there. and they want to identify it and name it, and they want to know the processes to take what's out there in the world and to be able to bring it and to know how to use that for their own benefit. That's what we call indigenous knowledge, you know, to be able to live out there, to recognize what the clouds are telling us, what that little bird is telling us, and what the language says. So there's a hunger in that, and I see it, and I wish I could do more. You know, I wish I could do more to feed that hunger. But it's there, and many of the old people recognize that. And so, when we talk about research, you know, you think about your own, the kind of education that you're receiving from your professors and the people that talk to you about how to do research. What are they saying about this kind of inquiry? If you're not being steered into these areas where we develop our human communities, then question those people that are telling you it's okay to go across cultures and study people for your own benefit. You know, at the same time not thinking about how can we develop those human communities that are out there. So don't squander the university education in research. You know, ask those tough questions. You know, where's the memory of our people? Where do we seek the memory of our people? How do we mobilize our old people to unearth that memory? That's what we need. That's what the young people really are hungry for, is that memory of what is it, you know, that made us very special people. So as I think about then, you know, in my own work and in community work, and you know, I have been stymied, you know, to access funding from Canadian institutions. I've been stymied because, you know, they have their own criteria, their own ways that you have to be, you know, a certain kind of, I don't know, either qualified or a certain kind of person before you access those things. And they're usually, you cannot channel those usually to the community level, to work with memory, to work with the people right on the ground. Usually there's, you know, all these strings attached that keep you tied to the university somehow. So I'm not being critical of that, but what I am saying is that as we move forward, and as I imagine this future, there has to be processes where our people have access to that kind of research, or of the funding, research expertise, research infrastructure, research programming that'll help our young people regain a lot of that knowledge. So I'm glad, Damien, I'm going to single you out right now. SAS culture. You know, this is what society should really be, you know, perhaps discoursing, is how do we create a society that's going to enhance these things that human communities really have to do. We can't have one cookie cutter for everybody, that all of you think the same way. I'll teach you one way of research and this is it. Because it hasn't helped our people at all. But if we start thinking about institutions and creating a society where we have these key either funding, education, and perhaps facilitators or the catalysts for this kind of new enterprise, you know. Damien works at SAS Culture, and we've accessed SAS Culture many times to do the work that university ought to be doing. You know, so, but if we almost need more of that. We almost need sort of a mentality right across the university, wherever the campuses are across Canada, to work for, you know, creating or enhancing, making the optimum of all these human communities that are in Canada. And not come around and just wipe off the memory of everybody, you know, including European people. Their memories are so white as well. It's very hard for them to identify where they are. People start thinking that they're Canadian. There are no Canadians. So it's, there's a lot of critique that I could say, but maybe in that way, what I'm saying is question the education that you get at the university. Question those profs that put these ideas to the sidelines so that we can follow their programs. Good enough. Before I start banging the table.
Thank you for giving me this tobacco. And when I was first asked about this, if I would be willing to come and try to contribute to this discourse and these topics, I wondered, and I poked fun at this whole scenario. And I read the program, and all these doctors and learned people and all of that, to whom I was being asked to speak of things that I know. I wondered what would I tell these learned people? They've done a lot of study, a lot of research. They know a lot about a lot of subject areas, and I questioned whether or not I would have anything novel that I would be able to share with them. But in any case, when we started this week, Monday morning, I was asked in a protocol way to bring my prayers and the knowledge that I've gathered over the years to pray about these things and to pray about the people that are contributing to this week. So I did that. And then afterwards, they asked me to say a few words, and I spoke. And I talked about my upbringing, my lineage, my genealogy, and what I had been taught as a child over 60 years ago to where I am today. And I thought, and I've heard others say this before, what I proffered Monday morning, my pipe, that's my degree. I didn't study 4 or 7 years to obtain that degree. I studied 60 plus years to get that. So that's my degree. But I'm not paid for it the way that these PhDs are. And I've also heard from other spiritual mentors about the days of old when these lodge people, pipe people were the richest people in our communities. That not necessarily in material wealth, but in honor and respect for the knowledge that they have acquired. Knowledge that I've heard my friend talk about here when I first met him at a health conference in Saskatoon a few weeks ago, when he brought his academic knowledge together with his traditional spiritual knowledge and combined the two. And I was very intrigued by that. And I thought, and I went up to him afterwards and I told him, this is what we need to hear. And you need to associate, gather those people around you who will speak in like manner. And to me, that's what has to happen in a setting like this at this university, University of Regina and First Nations University. And all of you who are students who know that, and Willie talked about the thirst and the hunger. I felt that. I went through that. And when I was working in a colonial system and I was part of that colonial mentality, I had the influence of Christianity, the influence of other nations, whether that was English or French or otherwise. And I incurred all of those biases and indeed many of those prejudices that I learned from these other nations. And I've been speaking on behalf of the Office of the Treaty Commissioner for about the last 8 to 10 years. And last summer, I was asked to work with the Regina Board of Education as an elder in residence. And I've spoken to all venues, all manner of groups, from church groups to university classes to high schools to elementary schools to police to government agencies, and about the history and about the knowledge that I've acquired throughout my lifetime in advocacy for the rights of our people, and the knowledge that I acquired throughout my life. And it was not the First Nation or the indigenous political organizations that called on me. It was the Office of the Treaty Commissioner and then later the Regina Public School Board. So I was grateful to those folks. And indeed in our own colonization, that's part of the programming, part of the learning that we have acquired, and part of the prejudices that we have taken, the prejudices that came upon me. And indeed, I too participated with those. And in the last 30 or so years, in returning to my own language, spirituality, traditions, rituals, etc., I've had to unlearn and deprogram most of those prejudices. I say prejudices, I don't say biases, because they were prejudices, that's what they were. For example, I learned from my own grandfather, great-grandfather, about his kinship with the Métis peoples, which in our First Nation organizations in our colonization, we were taught about the prejudices against Métis people and against women. So I had to unlearn all of that. And I found it through the teachings of old people, old men and old women. And I hearkened back to my own great-grandfather, who was who had taken a Métis patriarch as his brother. And indeed, a few years ago, a descendant of that old Métis patriarch came to find me, not me specifically, but my family. And thus began my deprogramming of the prejudices against Métis people. And when I look back in the study of the treaty, the transcripts, for example, I see where the First Nations leaders at the time, during that day, called for the inclusion of the Métis peoples. I didn't know that. I had to unlearn the prejudices that I had acquired over my lifetime. And so too was it with women. I went to seek out elders, men and women, about what was the inclusion of women at that time. Though they weren't speakers, orators, they were no less influential. Because when the chiefs had concluded their days of treaty negotiations, they went back to their camps and they called upon their elders, men and women, and asked, "This is what we said. Is there anything you want us to say?" And they said things like, "You men will get up there and speak and ask for a schoolhouse on every reserve, as men will do, bricks and mortar." And the women said, "You will talk about our children, our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and children yet unborn." Those were the words. And those were the words of women. It's because of that today I'm living as a treaty person. And then they spoke about the spirituality of this historic agreement. The spirituality was Amao Yoftawi Mao, our great father, God, the Creator. Negawi Nanaski, our mother. Kisagaw Pisam, Tipskaw Pisam, CP. All of those things are the embodiment of spirituality that our people, old people, talked about. That the English people had no idea about what these old people were talking about. And so when I talked to the old people that I did, they reminded me about that. 4 days, they said, they went back to their old people and they talked to them, they asked them. And 4 days it was the women that came forward and said, "You men will remember the spirituality." And today we've forgotten about that spirituality. We look only at the treaty as a covenant, the treaty as a legal contract, the treaty as an adhesion to the Royal Proclamation of 1763 and all of that legal stuff. And we've forgotten about the spirituality of what it is that our people talked about, what they wanted, and the perpetuity of that agreement. So those are the kind of things that I talk about when the government of Saskatchewan legislated the teaching of treaty in 2007. And I call this the Age of Enlightenment, as with the elementary schools, the high schools, and now it's coming to the universities. And so, like the end of February, I spoke to a group of students in Moose Jaw, 1,500 students at once. Imagine the influence. I pray each time that I speak so that I don't speak wrong, and I speak the truth, and I speak from here. And as always, that influence is felt. Last Friday, I went back to Moose Jaw, 700 students. Again, the influence, and I was speaking the way that I'm speaking now. And so, I think about, for example, a child in grade 1 completing grade 12, coming to university. How enlightened that child will be after 12 years of treaty teaching. And how I speak to, like tomorrow, not tomorrow, next week I'll be speaking to teachers again, attempting to enlighten them about the understandings of the indigenous peoples against the understandings of European peoples that arrived here. And so, you know, bridging those understandings and trying to influence people's thinking. And you know, there's so much, there's not just prejudices, biases, or what have you amongst our people. There are a whole array, a whole host of misunderstandings, biases, prejudices, called stereotypes, call them what you may. The most recent being the University of Regina cheer team. You all know about that. Okay? I spend a lot of time talking about stuff like that because I'm asked. I spent 11 years in an Indian residential school. I'm asked about that. What I've had to do to recover from that. What I've had to do to seek forgiveness for the things that I've done as a result of that. And so, for me, it has been a return to my people, my spirituality. When I first went back to my community, I was living what I call a very unspiritual life. And so I went to the old people, and the first thing they told me is, you take your tobacco, you take your cloth, and whatever else you want to give, and you take it to the old people. And you suffer yourself. You sacrifice yourself. You fast. You don't eat, you don't drink. You dance, you pray. And whatever happens will be your guide. And that's how I started. I did that for 4 days, for 4 years. That's how I began this life. Later on, I went to fast in the mountains. And later on, I did a horse ride from Vernon, BC to Brandon, Manitoba. 49 days, 2,000 kilometers. All of that to regain this balance. And indeed, all of us have this imbalance in our lives. And that's probably what you're talking about when you say, how do you incorporate that, the spirituality, the conceptualizations into a setting like this? That's how. You go back, you go and find it, you go and retrieve it. You search for it, you work for it, you sacrifice for it, you suffer pain for it. That's what I had to do. Didn't come easy. So all of that, I guess, I don't know how you put that in scientific terms or academic terms, but essentially, that's what I've had to do, and I dare say that's what you have to do in this setting. So I'll leave it at that for now, and I'll pass this on here. It's kind of what I wanted to share.
Thank you for asking me to be here today. Thank you for the coffee and tobacco. It's always a welcome thing to get. What can I tell you about research? What can I tell you about how you would go about it and what you would do? You know, I look around this room and I see so many bright, wonderful young faces. So smart, so eager, wanting to do the right thing. And so busy looking out at everything else to say, research that, research this, research something else. When the research has to take place inside you, you have to research yourself first before you can go out there and find the research that's going to really resonate with you. It starts out there on that woman, that big, huge woman, our Mother Earth. Go out there and sit on her, not on a blanket, like I see so many people do, or chairs. I've seen people that are so disconnected from our mother that they put these little things that are made of cement in their yards, little frogs and little birds, and they're all made of cement. What about the birds that we have that are talking to you and singing to you? Where's your offering to those every day? They're preparing you for everything that's ahead of you. They're preparing you so that you can welcome those future people. You can carve that space out for them. They need that ready for them by you. By you. And you need it ready by prayers that we put out there. This tobacco, you know, it's used to place out there on Mother Earth to thank her for that space that she created in her, that we popped up from. That place where our life came from. Because she provided us with our body. Everything that's in Mother Earth is in us. Her lifeblood is water. That's our closest relative. We're over 85% water. And if I would say I'm 85% something, wouldn't that be my closest relative? You bet. How much attention do we pay to this? How much do we honor it every day? Do we thank it for being there? Do we take that first drink of water in the morning, ask the grandfather son for a blessing to that water as it flows through us, that we ask it, all those cells to match that blessing that comes in that water as we bless it. Prepare yourself. It starts with you. And everybody's going to find an answer for themselves, but it's all going to be a different answer. No two people will have the same one. No two people will have the same experience with the water, with Mother Earth, with their brothers and sisters, the birds, with those little things that live on all those sacred plants that we have out there. And all those plants out there are sacred. I hear so often people say, the four sacreds, yes, they're very sacred, those four sacreds. We have them in ceremony, but all the rest are too. We can't afford to lose one. If we lose one, that's somebody's food source. There's some little bug, some little worm, something, butterfly, that lives off that plant. Do you think it's sacred to that? You bet it is sacred to that little thing. You know, those little bugs and those little worms, they do what we cannot do. We can't even hope to do. They clean Mother Earth. Do we? No. Not a chance. But do we give offerings to them? Do we pray that they'll always be there for us? I hope so. I hope so. We can't afford to lose any. We've lost a lot now. We've lost a lot of plants. And for every plant we lose more little things that live on it. So when we do think of this whole idea of research, we go sit out on Mother Earth and look around you and say, what is in her that gave me life? What is in Mother Earth besides the water? You've got copper, zinc, potassium, iron. That's all in Mother Earth, and it's in you too. And there's even little bits of that. If you went without it, you would be really ill. You need all of those things. You need all those little trace minerals that she has in her. And of course, air. When you're sitting out there, look around you. It's all the air that's around you. You can only live 3 minutes without it. Think of that, young guys, when you go out there and you roar that motor and you leave a blue streak as you go down the street. What are you doing to the air? You're not the only one breathing. And I'm not talking about humans. The fox, the skunk, the deer, the moose, they have to breathe it too. Not the only ones walking on her. Not the only ones that need to eat. Not the only ones that need to breathe. Not the only ones that need to drink water. You're not the only ones that need to have that sunshine. And we carry that sunshine deep within us. It's that balance. Without that sunshine, without that warmth in our body, if it goes too high, we die. If it goes too low, we die. We got to keep that balance within our body. It's called your temperature, but it's still your grandfather's sun. Research yourself, and the Creator then will tell you which way you go, how you do it, where you do it. And your mind will be free. You'll feel good about what you're doing. But go and sit out on her, with nothing between you and her. Just sit on her. She's your mom. My mom never says no. Never. That's all I have to say about research for you. Be good. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to say hello to all of you, to greet you. Mie wichachbe dobawi imachiape. And I'd like to say hello and I'm to the elders here that are here. I've heard you speak before, and I saw Noel Starblanket when I was only 14 years old, and he was speaking at a youth conference, and he really inspired me a lot. And back then, the people were doing just what you're doing right now, research and creating communities and creating capacities among our people. And that's what happened when you build capacity and you build leadership. You do it by actively involving your students or your family into listening to people like Noel, listening to storytellers. And that's what my mom and dad did to me. They took me out of school for a whole week and took me to a conference, and I got to listen to a lot of people. And I'm very honored to be sitting here among the elders. And Elder Betty, she's been my mentor for years. I think 20 years now. She's been my mentor and helping me and with her maternal voice, her maternal knowledge, and after my grandmother died, I didn't have anyone to teach me those things. And I had my mom, but I lost my mom and my dad, and they were my teachers. They taught me a lot, and they were my wisdom keepers, and they were my knowledge keepers, my grandfather, and that's how I learned. And that's how research is, by learning off our knowledge keepers, our wisdom keepers, our elders, and it's really exciting. I like to tell stories and to share ideas on how I was taught. And I too went to boarding school, And when I was hired in the Regina Catholic system here as a teacher, I said, I don't want to go teach at a Catholic school, but I'll give it a try. I just didn't want to. I just had this feeling that there was going to be nuns there and priests, and it was all going to come back on me. But I went, and then to the father that was there, I told him I want to have talking circles in my classroom. I want to set up a teepee in my classroom because I was teaching culture and language. And then he said, go ahead, do whatever you want. And so I did. I set up a teepee, did talking circles, and I worked with the inner city youth in Regina. And I did medicine wheel teachings, and I taught them the use of the tobacco, to pray with the tobacco. And as Elder Betty said, that's the protocol. It's the first thing that you have to do when you start research. You write papers. That's the first thing you do. That's what got me through university with my MEd and my BEd and my BA. All I did was offer tobacco. And I said, I want to do this. When I was 6 years old, I wanted to be a teacher. I always wanted to be a teacher ever since I was 6 years old. Because I went to boarding school and I didn't like it, and I wanted to make changes. I wanted to be an educator of my own people. And so that's what you have to do, is you have to offer that tobacco. And that's what I did in the schools, in the Catholic schools in Regina. I just taught them. I went against the Regina Catholic school system where you can't smudge and pray in the classroom and do your spirituality. I did all that. I just fought for it. And every morning we prayed, and I invited the father to come and pray with us at the Catholic church. I was teaching in Holy Rosary at the time. And so he came and he smudged with us every morning. And when we smudged, he brought his holy water too. So we did everything together for the kids. And it was so wonderful to be able to do that. And part of your training, Indigenous research training, is to take those steps and overcome all the fears of what might happen. Be fearless. Try new things, and because everything is, we're working here for our people, for the future, for future generations. And when I was going to school here, I was so proud of it, so proud of our college. And I always, when they asked me to come back here to teach classes like Indian Health Science 200, I was honored. And I do medicine room teachings with Elder Betty. I was honored because of all the knowledge that I have. And I've retired from teaching now. I've taught for 25 years, special ed. And all during that time of teaching, I've helped to heal children because I'm a healer as well. That's what I do now that I've retired. I do a lot of healing and wellness at different places all across Saskatchewan, the United States, helping with mental health disabilities and helping students. I just did a workshop on suicide with a lot of youth up in Onion Lake. And so that's what I do now, and it's an honor to be able to teach what you were taught, and my elders, like Elder Betty and Noel and Mr. Irwin. So I really believe that we have to we have to work together, and it has to be like a two-way system of communication. Sometimes our communication is not understood as Native American people. There's a lot of that, like I didn't know about the government and the power struggles that go on with government and all different kinds of organizations. So there has to be a lot of education on how these organizations work so that we could teach our people that. We always try to build capacity and work with our people, but they don't know and they don't understand how these organizations work. So we have to always always try to educate them. And it's very important that we use ceremony, because our life is a ceremony as Native American people. Our life is a ceremony. Like Elder Betty said, everything is a ceremony around us. All life is a ceremony. And so we have to, I feel, with creating leadership, is to build on the strengths of each and every one of the, like what I do when I taught special ed was I built on their strengths. Every person had a strength, no matter who it was in my classroom, they all had a strength. Some of them couldn't talk, some of them couldn't hear, but they had such beautiful strengths. And our people have such beautiful strengths, and we have to build on those strengths. As researchers, going out there, everything has to be experiential based learning, like what Elder Betty does here, and with the gardening and the organic garden, all that is experiential based learning. The medicine room teachings, all that is experiential based learning, because we get the students in there and then they learn. They're hands-on learning, experiential learning. That's how our people, that's how to build capacity with our people. And also not forgetting the traditional and the cultural part of it, and the spiritual part, the medicine room teachings. Taking them out in the morning and looking to the west, then to the north, and to the east, and to the south, and looking up to Father Sky and Mother Earth. Those are all part of our life, circle of life teachings. And they're very important. So when you go out there and develop programs, keep in mind that everyone is unique and everyone has a gift to share. And I don't know what else to say. Thank you.